Welcome to the AFL Uncensored podcast. I'm your host, T. Johansson. With me, as always, is my co-host, Amari Fraser. And today we have a special guest that I think everyone will be interested in hearing, Ryan Bellrose. Ryan, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Doing really, really well. So first off, Ryan, first off, Amari, I kind of wanted to talk about the feedback that we've gotten after our first podcast. I've been actually slightly overwhelmed with the really positive feedback we've gotten and the messages. And I just want to say to everyone listening, that stuff means a lot. It's hard to really understand if we are bringing entertainment to people and if people are willing to listen. So that feedback's really important. And we're going to keep hoping that we get that from you guys, good or bad, because we really want to make a really good, entertaining product. And I know, Amari, you've had the same response as well.
Yeah, it's been great to hear all different kinds of positive responses. Guys wanting to be on the podcast, just how entertaining it is, how professional it is, and that's always great to hear. And like you said, it's always hard to gauge because we always want to make sure that hey, we're contributing and fulfilling that side of where people are if they're gonna take out of their day to listen to us, is it gonna be worth their time and add some value? And I know we're probably the most value add self-help podcast out there, but we want to make sure we entertain people and they feel good after hearing us. So it's great to hear that, and just looking forward to providing that more for people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So keep bringing that in, guys. We really do appreciate that. So Ryan, I want to start with, basically, I know a lot of people know you, but not everyone knows your journey. So take your time and tell us your football journey, which led into your AFL and then your AFL journey.
Sure, yeah. So I started off playing bantam. I was a quarterback. That's the funny part. And then we moved to St. Albert, and they had a really good quarterback there, and they told me I had a choice. I could either ride the pine or I could switch over to defense. And it's kind of funny because, I never I never played defense at all before that, so they threw me on defensive line. So I went from playing quarterback to defensive line, and then my first year in high school, I played for a team called the St. Albert Storm. So I was in grade 10, and I was one of two kids in grade 10 on the team. They didn't have a junior team, and we ended up making it all the way to the provincial final where we played LCI, and LCI absolutely shit-canned us. But right up to that point, we didn't even allow a touchdown. So we went through an entire regular season where I think we allowed 4 first downs. We had just an insanely good defense. But yeah, so anyways, that was my high school career. I played for St. Albert. Then I went to St. Joe's, where we didn't win a game. I think we scored 3 touchdowns all year, and I scored 2 of them on defense. So it was, St. Joseph Saints.
That's quite the switch.
Oh God, it was an eye opener because up until that point, I thought losing, just something that never happened to me, right? And then, then after St. Joe's, for my final year of high school, I played 1 season for the Émile Lazare Voyageurs. And then something kind of weird happened. I went out to the U of A, and they told me I made the team, but they didn't realize that I was only 15.
What?
Yeah. So they literally, Coach Tom Wilkinson came over to me, and he's like, yeah, he said, you really played well as camp, and, we think you have a lot of room to improve. We think that, you're going to have a nice long career. So what are you taking in school? And I said, I thought this was a tryout camp. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I haven't applied for university yet because I still have 1 more year of high school. And he looked at me kind of funny, and he was like, how old are you? And I said, I just turned 15 in December. And I remember he was just like, okay, we got to have a chat. So anyway, so I went through the whole camp. I literally went through their whole fall camp, and I had no clue that was supposed to be for guys that were already in university. Right. So anyway, it was kind of funny. So yeah.
What year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That would have been 90. Hang on a second. God, I'm old.
Yeah.
Would have been 96.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe. It was. It's actually funny because what ended up happening. So anyway, Coach Wilkin. No, it wouldn't have been 96. It was 94. So Coach Wilkinson, he actually had a good friend on the Edmonton Wildcats coaching staff, and he called them up and he said, look, there's this kid, he doesn't want to play high school anymore. He's already played 3 years of high school. and he wants to play junior. And, we were going to carry him on our roster, but, he can't get into school right now. So you guys should take him for a year. So I went out to the Cats camp, and I really struggled there because they had a bunch of guys that got cut from the Bears. And I already knew that I would have made the Bears. And I was frustrated because they were like 3rd and 4th year juniors. So, of course, they were getting on the field and I wasn't seeing the field.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I had the Edmonton Huskies in my ear saying, hey, you should just come play for us. Anyway, I had a really rough season with the Wildcats because they were shitty and they were losing games by a lot. And I still wasn't seeing the field. So I was getting kind of annoyed. So we're playing. It's actually funny. You're going to laugh. And Daryl Leeson still laughs about this. So we're playing the Regina Rams. And that's Daryl Leeson's team.
Yeah.
And at the time, like you got to remember now, I was barely seeing the field at all. So it's late in the game. They're up like 35-0, like just shit canning the Wildcats. So the defensive line coach, he's like got me at the end of the bench, and I'm not getting off the bench. And then Jim Toomey at the time was their defensive coordinator. He comes over and he says, put Bellrose in the game. Let's just see what he can do. I mean, we're losing by 35 anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they put me in. And I was playing defensive end, so I beat the tackle clean, came around the outside, and absolutely lit Daryl up from behind. Like he did not see me coming. He was like, and I'm like, we're literally talking elbows and assholes. Like I hit him hard.
They kept him in the game. You're at 35-0. You're still in there.
Oh yeah, Daryl. Are you kidding? When Daryl played for the Rams, he never came out of games.
Yeah, no, I believe it.
So anyway,
I've been on the end of some Daryl Leeson ass kickings, and he never came out of the game.
Oh, dude. Okay, so people always laugh because like Daryl and I are actually really good friends. Like we've known each other now for 30 years, right? But it's funny because like so I laid him out, right? And of course I'm young and I'm mouthy, and I get up, and I was like, I can't even remember what I said. Something stupid anyway. And Daryl looks at me, gets up, and he kind of adjusts his pads because his pads were all mangled from me landing on him.
Yeah.
Gets up and says, well, now I got to throw another touchdown.
Yeah.
And no joke, the next play, he throws like a 60-yard bomb for a touchdown. My teammates are screaming at me, and I'm like, fuck you guys. I'm the only one I actually fucking got him. Like nobody else tackled him.
Yeah.
So then a couple plays later, same thing. I come around the edge. This time Daryl sees me and he starts running away. And I don't know if you guys know this, but he's a big bugger, but he's fast.
No,
right?
Ryan, I'm telling like quick story for me. I know how fast he is because my 3rd year, so he was younger, but he still wasn't young. But in my 3rd year, I picked him. And he chased me down. He caught me from behind and tackled me, and we didn't end up scoring. And it's still one of the most embarrassing moments in my life. But I look back on him, the guy's stride was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's crazy fast. Like people don't know that about him, right?
Yeah.
So I come flying around the edge again, and this time I hit him just as he's throwing it, right? Mm-hmm. But he threw it incomplete, and I get up and like a dummy, I talk shit to him again. And he looks at me and he's just like, kid. Like shakes his head, and he literally says, walking back to the huddle, well, I'm throwing another one now. And he did, no joke, like another 50-yard bomb touchdown.
And knowing Daryl, he's saying those things just deadpan too.
Oh yeah,
right?
like not angry, not no, no, I'm gonna throw another touchdown.
Yeah,
now.
Just very calm, no emotion behind it.
Trust me, when you're on the same team as him, it's awesome. But when you're on the other side, you just hate the guy. Like, I was raging, right? So I come off to the side. The defensive coordinator comes over and goes, keep that up. Like, keep it up. You're showing why you're here, right? Mm-hmm. The D-line coach walks over to me and goes, that was a pretty nice rip to swim, but you lost contain. And I'm like, I didn't lose contain. I literally hit the quarterback as he was throwing the ball, you idiot. So then I looked at the D-line coach and I was like, I don't know if I can play for this guy. So I go off to the side, and now one of the other D-line guys comes over and he says to me, he's like, Bellrose, he's like, what got into you? I'm like, yeah, it's called field time. You get me on the field, I'll make plays. D-line coach comes over and he thinks I'm taking a shot at him by saying that. So he starts mouthing at me. So I looked at him, took my pads off, and walked out. That was the last game I played for the Wildcats. So I never said a word. So they were calling me, and I didn't want to go back. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm done playing football. I was playing basketball a lot at the time, and I was playing club basketball. And to be honest, I was actually a better basketball player. And I get this guy calling me, and he's some random. I had no idea who he was, and he's like, "Hey man, did you ever hear about the Alberta Football League?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" And he's like, "Well, it's a whole bunch of teams all over Alberta." He really played it up, like, and I got to tell you, dude, in those years, like the year that I first started playing for them was 95. It was, 94. It was a beer league, like it really was a beer league back then, right?
Mhm.
Like there were literally dudes bringing coolers of beer in the locker room. Dudes are getting shit faced at halftime. Like it was, guys smoking in the locker room. Like it was.
Yeah.
He sold it to me as it's a viable alternative to junior, right? So I go out to the first practice. They used to practice at the JP Bowl in Edmonton.
Yeah.
So I go out, and you would not believe. Like I'm literally like, okay, think about the most ridiculous, goofy football movie you've ever watched, and then times it by 10. All right. The center was like 5'5" and about.
What team was this, Ryan? Was this the Stallions or?
No, this was the Edmonton Seminoles. They became the Edmonton
Seminoles.
Yeah,
okay.
They were called the Edmonton Seminoles. Then they became the Icemen, and then I started the Stallions after.
Oh, you started. Okay, we'll get into that later then.
Yeah, we can get into that. And it's funny because the Bucks started the same year, and it was a pretty good rivalry right off the bat. We had a brawl in the first game.
Yeah. Well, okay, we'll talk about that too.
So anyway, I go out, and like it's a shit show, dude. Like the center was actually a really cool guy. His name was Josh Smith. He was like 5'5", 340 pounds. They had a guy playing quarterback that only ever played corner for the Edmonton Huskies. His name was Ken Williams. They had like some crazy good ballers though. They had a guy named Max Irable. Max might have been the best defensive football player that I've ever played with in the AFL. And I've played with guys like Gomea Cooper, set an NCAA record for tackles in a game. I've played with some really good players.
Yeah.
But like, I got to tell you, Max was he was on another level, and he ended up going to University of Manitoba. They switched him to fullback of all things. And he had a decent middling career, but I honestly believe if they'd have kept him at linebacker, he'd probably have been in the CFL. He was just that kind of athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I played for the Icemen. It was a shit show. We were always just good enough to be in the playoffs. And then in 97, we made it to the AFL final, and we lost a game to a team called the Red Deer Sooners. That was long before the Bucks.
Yeah.
And I think Dave Haney, actually, your founder, was on that team.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they beat us 7-3. And the reason they beat us, the last 4 plays of the game, we scored a touchdown 4 times. All 4 times it got called back.
No way.
Yeah, it was, and we ended up losing the game 7-3.
Holy.
So it was insane. But anyway, then what ended up happening was the Icemen were kind of on a downward spiral after that. And like there was a lot of issues going on, and I wanted to be more proactive in recruiting. I wanted to be more professional. I got told, like start your own team then. And I got pissed off, and I said, well, fuck you, I will. And I literally did. So I called up, I had my roommate at the time, and I called up like 4 people off the Icemen. And I said, look, I'm not recruiting guys off the Icemen. I'm going to recruit all new guys. It's going to be just dudes that I played football with and dudes I played flag with, some guys I played basketball with. I said, I'm tired of losing. And so anyway, I made a bunch of phone calls, and everybody's like, no, there won't be any good teams in Edmonton. There's not enough good players. And I was like, are you guys kidding? Like, there's a lot of good football players in Edmonton. They're just not playing in the AFL.
Mm-hmm.
So I went around, I went to like all the flag things. I set up a little booth and bought Gatorade and gave guys free Gatorade. And, then I would talk to them a little bit about the AFL. The big selling point, let's be honest, and for a lot of guys, it's not a selling point, but for some guys it is. Even on the good teams, if you're a good player, you'll play. Right? Like it's literally, most teams want to win and the best player will play. It's very rare that politics comes into that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does on some teams for sure. But
you're right. It is. There are good players that take advantage of that and never come to practice and only show up to the games, which can be annoying. But at the end of the day, you're right. It seems to be that way. It's not my way of going about things. I actually quite enjoy practicing, and playing for the Wolfpack last year and not being able to come to practices because the drive was quite annoying. So I'm looking forward to be able to practice again. But yeah, no, you're right. That is that is a feature, right? If you're good enough, it's not buying your time. You can get in and play right away.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to say this about you too, like, because guys give you a lot of shit, but like, I always say the same thing, right? Ballers know ballers, right? I used to take the piss out of you all the time when we played, but I always knew you were a hell of a good player. And I told Daryl, and Daryl and I talk about this stuff all the time too. If you look at the guys who are the genuine cream of the crop in the league. And I'm not talking about the one-off guys that, that crank up for a year, or guys that are fresh out of university.
Yeah.
But the guys that are there day in and day out, they go to practice and they pay their fees. Why?
Yeah.
Because they love the game and they love playing football.
Yeah.
Like, I look at it like this, dude. If you're going to pay, like, well, I don't know what the fees are now, but when I was playing, it was usually $350.
Yeah.
If you're paying $350, you could look at it as if it's a 10 game season, it's $35 a game. I want to get as much football out of that money as I can.
Yeah.
Which means I'm going to go to every practice that I can. I try not to ever miss practice. I'm going to dress, and I want to play football.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I never understood the guys that don't show up for practice, don't want to pay their fees, don't show up for team stuff. It's like, well, go play dodgeball or something.
Yeah, I've been kind of the same way, and for me, it's like, so this isn't a brag, it's just a fact. But in 11 years with the Bucks, 11 full seasons, I missed less than 5 practices, and every one of those practices was a really legitimate reason. The thing that grinds my gears and upsets me, especially with my own teammates, is dudes who miss practice and are playing video games or sitting at home, and there's obviously good reasons out there, but it's 4 hours a week, and you get to go out on a football field and put the cleats on and put the helmet on and run around and get better and be around your teammates and be around your friends and your coaches, and you get 2 hours of escape from real life. So I like, you're right. Like the real, and I think, and again, I don't want this podcast to feel like I'm bragging about myself, but like, I am proud of myself for showing up to practice. I think it's fair to say that I didn't have to show up to practice in order to earn my playing time. I don't think I did, but I still showed up. I still will show up because I don't want to be, I want to set an example. I never want people to think that, oh, this guy thinks he's better than the game, because at the end of the day, there's not a single human on earth that's better than the game. And, you really taught me that. You kind of mentioned it a little bit. But my first year in the league, the reason why I really wanted to have you on is because for me personally, you've been a huge influence in my football life, but also in my life as a human being. Because when I came into the league at 20 years old, I'm coming off of I went to the Wildcats, and I was one of the few people to actually start as a rookie in junior football. And I thought I was, as a receiver, and I thought I was pretty big shit. And then I came to the Bucks, and it was kind of like fair play with the Bucks then. So they were like, hey, we have too many receivers, like, go play DB because we need DB. And I was like, this would be easy for me. And I came in there, and I did some good things, but I was so technically flawed, and I didn't know how technically flawed I was. And you definitely let me know it. And at the time, as a 20-year-old kid coming in thinking I'm the hottest shit in the world, and like, I'm just the greatest DB to ever play, and to have you basically say, sit down, kid, you're not even close. My automatic reaction then was to get, incredibly defensive and to really dislike you. But what it did for me was it really motivated me to look at myself deeper and realize, well, maybe he's not just being an ass. Maybe he actually does see something in me, but he's stopping, my ego from stopping where I can become. And I think as I've grown older, I've realized that you're very blunt, you're very honest, and you're very true to yourself, and you also, you speak what you believe. And for me, as hard as it was to hear, it really opened my mind to what I needed to do and my flaws and my weaknesses, and also being able to handle that kind of criticism. And so as I've moved forward in my life, I really look back on to, as I don't want to say mean, because I don't think it was mean. I think you were being actually I think that was the best thing to happen to me at that time in my life, was to have somebody just kind of sit me down and be like, hold on, kid, like, know your role, and that really focused me. So I owe you a lot, and I thank you for that. But it got pretty heated there. That I don't know if you remember the old the old AFL website or whatever that was.
Oh yeah, the old AFL forum there, the message board that I started. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Teach. I saw right away what I saw when I saw you play was a kid who was like stellar athlete, right? Because you've always had that. You've always had the speed, the quickness. What you were lacking in really was the technique and the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did notice, like I noticed over the years, you got better and better at that. And your technique didn't just improve, but like your mindset, even the way you approached the game changed.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like a lot of these young guys, though, they come out and they think, oh, like I was a wicked athlete in high school, I'm going to dominate the AFL. And it's like, dude, we had NFL running backs come in the AFL and they didn't dominate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's all about like, what kind of effort are you going to put in?
So, absolutely. And I'll add to that just with guys coming in and, you know, young players, especially the one thing, especially like high school players and like kind of guys who come from junior, is you're playing against guys who, you know, are either like grade 12s and like other grade 12s or junior, and that range from 18 to 22. But playing with grown men's different.
Yep.
Playing with grown men's just straight different.
Oh yeah, dude. When I first came in the league, you got to remember, I was just a kid. Like I was a pup, and I remember because I was so mouthy. You guys have no idea. Like you think you were arrogant, Teach. I was the prototype for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember coming up into the first practice, walking up to Max Erebor and saying, so who's going to be my backup? And he just looked at me and he's like, what? And I'm like, well, I said, I'm your new starting defensive end. So I'm just curious who my backup's going to be. And it was hilarious because like the point was like, you know, I really did think like that. And it took a little while for me to kind of settle down and realize, hey, that's just not the way to approach things. Like, you know, it's funny because we're in a league. Like this is a men's league. At the end of the day, like my biggest problem with the way that the AFL's been trending is that they're positioning it now more as only for guys out of university. This used to be a working man's league. So it's like it is kind of hard to watch sometimes for me to see these younger guys coming in and, you know, like I know when I played, almost all of us were tradesmen. Almost everybody had a construction job or a trades job. A few of us actually had desk jobs. It was pretty rare. So I don't know how it is now, but
yeah, it's definitely we've tried to, I think, expand the talent. I know I totally get what you're saying, and I think the ideal AFL is kind of a mixture of that. I don't know if I think you and I agree on this, Ryan. I don't think it's ideal for a team in the Alberta Football League to have more players that don't live, you know, aren't from Alberta or don't live in Alberta. I think that's what makes the league really unique is, you know, just like the Canadian Football League, has a quota on Canadian players. Like I would like to see some sort of quota on local players. And just because that is the heart of the league, that's where it started. But at the same time, I also love to have talent come in. I mean, when I play against, you know, these guys that are, you know, CFL fringe players that come from Ontario and are looking for that shot, like I love that. And I think there's a solid middle ground.
Oh, there has to be, because I agree. Look, at the end of the day, I was one of those dudes that I always played better against better players. Like I'm not afraid to admit that. I played down to my competition way too often. But I think that my issue isn't so much that these talented guys are coming to play. I mean, obviously you want the best players possible in the league. It's better for promoting the league. It makes for better football. It makes for, you know, it's more fun for the fans to watch. But my worry is that they're not, like, some of these teams are clearly not making sure that these guys pay fees. Like you and I talked about this. If they had it where the league collected the fees, then guys would have to pay. Because
so we'll talk about that. I want this podcast to be about this as well. I want to discuss, and we're going to have the president and the vice president on next week, but I want to discuss areas that we can make this league better. And because I want, like, for me, the league has given me so much. And I've talked about you and the way that I view you and what you've done for me to improve as a player and as a person, but also everyone I've met and the experiences I've had. Like I feel like I owe the AFL so much, and I'm a person, I want to give back to people and to things that have given to me and created, who I am as a person. And so I want to use this podcast to, talk about ideas with the league. And I actually love that idea. I love the idea of every single player having to pay fees to the league, and then the league dispersing that money to the team so that the teams don't lose out on that, those funds. But, having it be like, hey, we know that this person paid this money because we can see it came from their account. It's to the league. And I propose something like that. I really do think that's a good idea. At least a good idea to talk about and to mold, because I think paying fees, it creates commitment from players, right? Like you said, if you pay fees, you want to get your full value. But if you don't pay fees, those are the guys that aren't coming to practice, right?
Yep. And half the time don't show up for games sometimes.
Yeah.
So, like Jim Lightfoot, like I was in the league a long time, right? I saw a lot of guys come and go as the president. Out of all of them, Jim Lightfoot was by far, if you ask almost anybody, they'll agree, he was the best president we ever had, because he genuinely believed in the league, and he always put the league over his own team, which used to frustrate the hell out of me, especially when it was time to talk about all-star stuff. But but Jim was that guy.
Yeah.
And we need to find somebody who is going to be that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I got to say, I'm not super enamored of the management the last couple of years. I mean, I thought you were doing a pretty good job. And the one thing I always knew about you is that even, and you might laugh when I say this, but I knew that even if you made a mistake, you were doing it because you thought that this was genuinely the best option.
Yeah. You know what? I appreciate you saying that, because for me, like, that's basically how I live my life. Like I really do what I believe is right, and I advocate for what I believe is right, and I put a lot of thought into things. And everything I did, I was president for a little bit there. I was kind of thrust into it from the vice president role, and then I really tried to make it my own. And it wasn't what I wanted it to be, because, as you know, Ryan, there's just a lot of roadblocks. The president basically has no power, right? So it was frustrating. It was hard to get ideas through, but that's why I'm really glad now that I'm doing this podcast with Omari independently, because now I can talk about my ideas and Omari can talk about his ideas without being kind of tied down by the politics of the league. And we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have President Vince and Vice President Teague on Wednesday. And I want people to get to know them and give them an opportunity, because I do think that they're good and they have good intentions. But I think that we need to talk about these ideas and get it forward to people that want to actually do a job. Whatever happened to Jim? Why did he leave? Do you remember?
Yeah, he got really sick. He had some really serious health challenges. And so he stepped away from being the president of the Wolfpack. He went to the league and said, "Look, guys, like, you're gonna have to find somebody." And it turned into a bit of a show. Like, I think part of the problem too, and I said this to Jim to his face, part of the problem was because Jim did everything for so long, and he was, he did everything the right way. People just always assumed that was how it was going to be. But I saw signs that, when Jim was going to step down, that things were going to be a problem. Like when they tried to suspend Daryl Leeson for life, right? Like that was so over the top. And it happened because Jim said, "Well, I'm the president of the Wolfpack. I have to recuse myself. So I'm going to rely on you guys to do the right thing and follow the rules properly." And then they just completely shit the bed because they saw an opportunity to ban the best player that ever played in the AFL.
Yeah.
And they took it. They tried to ban him for life.
Yeah, that seems, I don't even really need context. That seems, knowing Daryl as well as I do now, especially after playing with him, I don't even need context to realize that that's absolutely ridiculous. But
this is all kind of like a history lesson for me.
What happened was he set the AFL record for passing in a game with like 665 yards. And this guy named Tegan Milne hits him in the back. It's near the end of the game. It's like, we didn't have a backup quarterback, so Daryl stayed in the game. But now he's like throwing short passes and we're running the ball. And this guy spears him, takes a 10-yard run at him, spears him in the back. No flag.
Clear dirty hit.
Yeah, and Daryl gets up and says to the ref, "Come on, ref! Like, what the hell?" So then the ref's like, "Okay, I'll keep better eye." So then we run a toss play to Rod Bailey, and he's taking it off around the edge, and Teagan does it again, spears Daryl in the back. Daryl gets up, and he looks at the ref. The ref shrugs his shoulders. So Daryl takes like a 20-yard run at Teagan, puts his shoulder into his back, and just obliterates him.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then Daryl goes, how do you like that when someone does it to you, you fucking asshole, or something like that? And Daryl never swears, so it was kind of like we were all like, whoa, like Lisa.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then that's the game that Brian Harrison tried to fight me in the handshake line. But anyway,
oh god,
we're walking out, and they literally they put in this thing saying that Teagan's injuries, because he was a nurse. People didn't know this, but Teagan was a nurse in Calgary. He put in a letter to the refs association saying that he had injuries consistent with a car accident and that he was permanently disabled now. Like, this is no joke. So then they had the call. They had the call, and they all were like, Daryl Lisa needs to be suspended for life. I mean, never mind that other people did way worse shit than that and got 1-game suspensions. Yeah. Like, literally, Jason Bunt the year before, a guy from the Iceman, took a 20-yard run after a touchdown, and our fullback was standing still, and he speared him in the back with his helmet and broke his ribs.
Well, I can picture people salivating at the idea of getting Daryl Eason out of the league when nobody could beat him. So,
oh yeah, it was yeah. So then they literally said, it was so funny though, because they were like, oh yeah, no, we're gonna suspend him like for forever. So then I called, like, somebody called me and told me, because I wasn't the Wolfpack's rep. And I literally called Dave Haney and I said, Haney, you need to understand something, that if this goes through, we're going to take the league to court and they'll lose. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, Teagan played the next game. So, like, he literally dressed and played for the Gators the next weekend. So, like, what's all this bullshit about permanent injuries?
Car accident.
Yeah, like, and I was like, did none of you do any research before you did the call? And he's like, no, well, we didn't know. And I was like, dude, I went and watched the Gators game and Teagan was playing. So yeah, so I knew that when Jim stepped down, it was going to be a shit show. And sadly, I was proven correct.
And you know what? I do hope we're on our way up, and I think and I hope this podcast can help with that as well. And I hope having Vince and Teague on and getting their voices out there will help too. And I really want more transparency from the league. Like, what are you trying to do to make the league better? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? Like, when I was president, one of the things I was really trying to focus on was getting the league a new trophy. Like, we have a league championship trophy that's like $5 from Walmart and has been around since the beginning of the league. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's just little things that I think can make our league a lot better. I want to ask you something, Ryan. And I think I have some things to say about this, because I think I have some answers as well, but I want to hear your perspective of,
sure,
why do people love to hate you?
Probably because I love for them to hate me.
Okay, yeah.
I knew it.
So when I first started playing, I was pretty cocky, right? And it wasn't enough for me to kind of be a dick on the field. I wanted people to like fear me a little more. So I started this stupid AFL message board. And this is like when the internet was still, starting to become a thing, right?
Yeah.
So what I used to do was I would go on this.
You had to like go to a website and like it was crazy.
Yeah. And I basically created it. It was on a site called eTeams.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I created this message board. And what I would do was I would go. And the funny part was, it was the year that I was actually retired that I started doing this. I was playing basketball all the time. I took a year off of football. And some guy
from 2007, 2008, something like that?
No, this would have been 99.
Oh.
The very first message board. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I took I was playing basketball and I wasn't really serious about playing football anymore. But I made it, and I was making fun of other guys. Like, there was one guy that used to play for the Thunder named Dwayne Krivolak, and I used to make fun of him all the time. And there were a couple other guys. And the thing was, because it was anonymous, we had all kinds of guys that would call themselves stuff like AFL Insider and shit like that. And it was anonymous, so it was like anything goes. It was like the Wild West, right?
Yeah.
And then one guy
Hold
made.
on. How did you
Oh.
get people to find it though? Like, how did people know about it back then?
Oh, it was all word of mouth.
Okay.
100%. Like I started it, and then I told a couple guys off the Wolfpack. This is when I was playing for the Icemen. Because like back in the day, there was like a network of dudes. All the guys that really loved the game. After games, we'd all go out for beers, and we'd like sit and bullshit, right? And a lot of them, they thought it was hilarious because like I am kind of an asshole on the field, and on the internet, I'm not really a very nice person sometimes. But like the dudes that know me know I'm a pretty solid dude, right?
Yeah.
So we were joking, and I would just tell them, you got to check this out because it's fucking hilarious. And dudes would join, and then they would be like, this is hilarious. And it's kind of like your podcast. It was all about entertainment. And if it's not entertaining, nobody would do it, right? But I mean, there were guys writing stuff on there that I was a combination of Attila the Hun and Alexander the Great and Hitler. Like some of the stuff that they would write was so over the top, but it was funny.
Yeah.
Right? And then it progressed from there. So then it got to I started doing this thing where I would do like weekly predictions of the games, and I would predict the scores. And I was almost always within like a touchdown or a field goal.
Yeah.
And,
well, you paid attention. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And you get it because you pay attention. So that's the whole point, is that I didn't just like pull these scores out of my butt. I was literally talking to guys around the teams, like, and saying, hey, like, what's going on? They would tell me. And it was funny because guys would tell me, oh yeah, man, we got so many injuries, shit like that. And then it got to the point where I started predicting my own team's games, and then I would predict my own performance in the games. And that people really don't like when you do that.
No.
And, So then it started getting really funny. And like I said, I've never been one of those people that's overly concerned about being popular. Like even on my own team, I know that there's a lot of former teammates of mine that'll tell you what an asshole I am because I hold everybody accountable.
Yeah.
I figure if I'm going to play with 3 broken ribs and you got a stubbed toe and you're bitching out, I'm going to call you out.
Well, you know what it is, Ryan, is in what I've really come to realize over my now 12 years in the AFL and knowing you for as long as I have and listening to you and I really try to listen to people with an open mind, and I think that's really important. But you earned your right to be a dick, and I mean that in like I don't like sometimes you got to be a dick. This is football. When you're showing up to every single practice and you're seeing your teammates not, or when you're showing up and playing with all these injuries and your teammate's got a hurt toe and he's on the sideline, and that's frustrating because you're out here sacrificing your summer, sacrificing your time. And so you're earning that right to hold people accountable. So, I think a lot of, in my past, and my teammates, I'm the same way. Like I can be, if you like, I always say this, and I think you'll agree, Ryan, I have a football personality and then I have a real life personality, and they're completely different. Yeah. When I'm in real life, like I'm the easiest person to get along with. I'm not really prickly at all. I enjoy people. When I play football, it's a switch is turned off, and I am football Tej, and I'm ready to do what it takes to win and be successful. And sometimes I can be a little spicy. Sometimes I can be a little prickly, and I've worked on that over the years. I'm definitely gone over the top before with teammates, and I've tried to really be a better teammate, but at the same time, I never want to lose my fire and my passion. And I think you'd understand that.
100%. Look, it's funny because like in 95, I won the most sportsmanlike player for the Edmonton Icemen. And my teammate, and my teammates were literally looking at each other like, what the fuck? Because we had a coaching staff and they picked all the award winners, right? And my best friend should have won it because he was genuinely probably the most sportsmanlike person I've ever met in my entire life. And he looked at me and he's like, are you for real? And I said, yeah. I said to the coach, I'm like, that when I help people up, I'm doing that to get in their head, right? You know that. Yeah. And he's like, what do you mean? Because he's like, oh, Ryan, I see you knock guys down and then you're always helping them up. I'm like, yeah, but when I'm helping them up, I'm saying shit to them like, I'm going to get more tired from helping you up than knocking you down. Like it's to get in their head. I wasn't doing it to be sportsmanlike. But yeah, it's there's a switch. Look, I don't care what anybody says. If you're a good football player, you have an ego. Yeah. That's just the way it is. Yeah. And all the best football players who are actually really good, the reason that they're good is because they have that ego. Yeah. They have a drive and you have to fulfill that ego. Because if you don't, you like people that are really shitty, very rarely, like if they're bad at football, they probably won't have a very big ego, and if they do, they're just delusional.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to do something to earn that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it drives you, right? So like going back to, our first year and you basically putting me in my place as a young kid was, my ego could have been my worst enemy. But then because I had someone like you who came into my life and some other people and teammates as well along the way, they were able to turn that ego into my biggest strength, because now my ego was, hey, I want to earn having people say, you're a really good player. You're really tough to go against. I wanted to earn the opportunity for teams to not want to throw at me. I would go to practices and to myself, I would say, I want to become so good that when teams are preparing their offense for our defense, they completely ignore throwing to my side. That's where I wanted to be. That was my ego driving me to success, instead
100%.
of my ego driving me to failure by being like, I'm so good, I don't need to practice, I don't need to work on my game, I don't need to get better. So there is kind of that controlled ego that you have to have. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. You have to, I always tell people, you have to have an ego, but you can't let it control you. And you have to be able to subvert that ego for the good of the team. Right? So for me, I won all kinds of like individual awards. I mean, like they might as well have just wrote my name on the most valuable lineman trophy for the Icemen. I mean, and it was funny because even I think my last year playing for the Icemen, I won most valuable lineman for the league. But that's the last year that I played in a team where I didn't have Jim Lightfoot as the president, because Jim would never put Wolfpack players' names up. So the only guy that ever really got any accolades would have been Daryl, because other teams, they just couldn't deny that he was the best, right? But the thing was, I'd already won so many individual awards that I didn't care. I just wanted to win rings.
Yeah.
And like lots of guys never realize that like I would be the best teammate in the world if you came to practice, paid your fees, busted your ass. I was your favorite guy on the team. But if you were a guy that half-assed it, if you didn't play hurt, if you cried about little things and you were whining about playing time all the time, I would be your worst teammate. Yeah.
I think, kind of summing that up, the why that people love to hate you, I think from my perspective, it's really that, people don't like hearing tough things about themselves, and B, people don't like being held accountable, and people don't like when other people are right about their own insecurities. And so I know, and I'm saying that from my perspective, because I got really upset that you were saying those things about me, like that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't as good as I thought I was at that time. And I realized I wasn't upset because you were saying it. I realized I was upset because you were right. And so my reality with when I see people attack you online and say all these things about you and call you all these names, I just think they know he's right. And now they're defensive. And because, and I'm not trying to like pump your tires or pump your ego or anything like that, but I think you're very honest. I think you speak your truth. And that's why I like you. That's why I wanted to have you on this podcast. And I really do hold you to a high regard, even though I don't always condone the way you go about your business, but you are always true to yourself, and people, often don't always like that.
No, I appreciate it. Look, I'm not a saint. I've done some pretty mean things to people sometimes. I haven't always been the nicest guy, and I'm the first one to admit that. But I mean, like, the one thing that I think that most guys that played football with and against me, one thing that they'll always say is that I respected the game. I never played dirty. I would use everything within the rules to get an advantage. I was one of the few guys in the league that used to watch film constantly. Before we had film, why do you think I was on the phone and had so many friends all around the league? Because I was doing my best to get every little bit of information about the other team that I could. Because information is power, right? I mean, that was just my way of doing things. And look, I think that there's a few times where I think if I could go back and maybe change the way I talked to somebody, or was maybe a little too mean to them, I probably would. But the reality is, like, we play in a men's league, and we play a sport that's really hard on the body. And I know you understand this because you've had some injuries too. If we're going to go out there and put our bodies on the line, the very least we should be able to expect is that the guy standing next to us is going to do the same thing. Because I mean, my biggest thing my last year with the Wolfpack, we had a guy that played linebacker for us. We're playing the Gators, and they're lining up. No joke, you can watch the film. They were lining up 3 guys across from me, and they were teeing off. And I was playing offensive line.
Yeah.
Right. They weren't even trying to make plays. They were just trying to they were trying to spear me, and try to beat me up.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious because I was like, dude, I've been playing this game for 20 years. And I got a big fucking head. You're not going to knock this head off. And they just kept hitting me, and I'm laughing because I'm like, you're not making plays, guys, and we're winning. And this was when the Gators were a dominant team, and the Wolfpack had no business being in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up beating them. And so we beat them in the playoffs. They were so pissed.
Mm-hmm.
But then late in the fourth quarter, our linebacker pulls himself out of the game, and I walk over and I go, what's going on? He's like, they're headhunting me. They're headhunting me. And I was like, welcome to the fucking football league, you moron. This is the game. Of course they're going to be headhunting you. That's what they're losing by 20 points. They're going to do their best to try and take you out. When you leave, what you just did is showed them that you're a punk. You just justified what they're doing. What you need to do is go back out there and start laying some licks, start hitting some people.
Mm-hmm.
But no,
yeah, that we've all had those teammates that you're like, what's going on? They're hitting their face mask. Okay, and I even as a coach, and Omari probably gets this too as coach, and it's just that's always the common complaint, right? And it's this mopey kind of attitude towards it. Okay, before we move on to some kind of rapid fire questions near the end here, Omar, you got anything to add on any of that stuff?
No, it's been great to hear and listen, and Ryan, to have you bring a lot of history to the league, because for newer players like me, where my first year was 2018, no way I would have heard this, known this or anything, but it's always good to hear and take it in and listen. But just goes to show how rich the league is in history.
I hope you guys get a chance. Maybe try to get a guy like Tom Luzzy and Jim Lightfoot. If you could get Jim on, that would be such a coup, because he was literally here. He was playing in this league in the first year, so 85.
Yeah, he's on my list. I'm going to contact him. I know. I'm so honestly I've just as a fan of the league, I've really enjoyed this conversation and listening. So we're going to definitely have you on again, Ryan. But before we go, I want to do a couple kind of rapid fire quick stuff. So, biggest ass / douche you've ever played against?
Jesse Maddox, not even close. Jesse Maddox from Fort Mac. The guy was the biggest douche in the history of the league. Would never take me head up. If I was playing left guard, he would move to the other side of the field constantly. And then when he got a chance, Jordan Heather threw a pick, and he took a 25-yard run at me, spears me in the back, and then does a dance after spearing me in the back, acting like he did something good.
I fucking knew you were going to say Jesse Maddox.
Yeah, there's been some dirty guys in the league, but Jesse Maddox is the cheesiest of the cheese.
That was so good. It just snapped. Didn't even think about it. Just okay. Shout out to Jesse. Jesse, we'll have you on. You can defend yourself. Because that's what we're going to do with this podcast. We will always have the other side of the story. I'm sick of these bullshit podcasts that have one side of the story on things. So we will always have two sides, but I appreciate that. Best road trip story summed up quickly.
Okay, best road trip story. First road trip with the Calgary Wolfpack made me go into the bathroom naked with Hughes Audette, and there's a reason they call him Huge Audette.
What? Oh my God.
And what they did was they put you in the bathroom with your clothes tied in a knot, and then turned the light off, and you had to get your clothes untied. And there were 4 of us, and 3 of us were fucking linemen. And Hughes Audette's wiener touched my leg and scarred me for life.
That stuff is not legal these days. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah, that would never fly nowadays. It's like total Me Too kind of shit.
Yeah, holy shit. Best.
I have to add to this. It was funny you say that, Ryan, because we had a away this last season. We had an away game to Fort Mac for playoffs, and Daryl was trying to get the rookies to do the exact same thing. And they were all kills. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Oh my God. So you just say that made it bring full circle.
Nice.
Oh man. Best game that you've ever played in?
Absolutely. It would have been Calgary Wolfpack versus the Edmonton Stallions. Let me remember what year that was.
Were you on the Stallions or the Wolfpack?
I was actually on the Wolfpack
Okay.
at that time. That was my first year with the Wolfpack. We had beaten them in the first game of the season. We beat them 63-19. And then they went undefeated. We went undefeated, and we met in the AFL final. And we were up 21 points. It was 21-0 at the end of the first quarter. We thought it was going to be another walk. And then our special teams fell apart, and they ended up scoring like a ton. And then it was back and forth the entire game. We ended up winning 51-46. But the reason that's my best game, or my favorite game, was because they had 3rd and inches, and they were in the lead, 46 to whatever it was. And they decided to run the ball at me to send a message. And so I tackled my good friend from university, Nathan Connor, for a 2-yard loss. And then Daryl marched us down the field for the winning touchdown with like a minute left.
Yeah, okay. That's Amari and I were just talking about a Daryl Eason 1-minute winning drive the other day. So he does that.
Oh yeah.
Good.
I told him my favorite moment in the history of the AFL wouldn't have mattered much if he wouldn't have scored that touchdown. Stopping them on 3rd and inches wouldn't have mattered if we wouldn't have scored.
What year was that, Ryan?
2004, I think.
Okay, so 2004. And what was your last year with the Wolfpack? Because you went to the Gators, but what was your last year with the Wolfpack?
Last year with the Wolfpack would have been 2015, I think.
And then you were with the Gators for a year or 2 years, something like that?
A year and a half, but then that's when my heart started giving me grief and I had to shut her down.
Best and worst teammate.
Oh, wow. So I've had so many great teammates, right? That's one of the things about having a career as long as mine. I mean, man, that's such a tough one. Yeah. You know what I'm going to say? And guys are going to get on me about this, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Daryl, and I'm going to say why. Not just because the guy was such an amazing football player, but Jim Lightfoot used to say to new players, if Bellrose and Leeson pay their fees, you pay your fees. Right? Mm-hmm. And like, I knew he was going to bring me up because like I was such a dick about it. I would go up to guys and be like, pay your fees or you don't play. Mm-hmm. Right? But Daryl, he would just set the tone. He was the first guy to pay his fees every year. Every year he had a check written and handed it to Jim the first practice, and he made sure everybody saw him do it. Because literally, if Daryl Leeson's going to pay and he's the best damn player in the league by far, you're going to pay.
You know, and I can attest to that because I'm playing with the Wolfpack this year. I saw that, and that was, something that they used quite often. And I mean, how can you? What can you say to that, right? When you've got the best player to ever suit up in this league by far, and there's no question anyone that argues differently is a moron and doesn't understand football. Yeah. Daryl Leeson is the toughest quarterback I've ever played against in my life. It's not even just like the flashy stuff that we'll sing his praises a little bit more when we have him on, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Best athlete, best player. He had a race. Okay. So he was like almost 40 years old and he had a foot race with Jordan Heather. Jordan was the Heck Crichton Award winner the season before that. Right.
Yeah.
And he challenged Daryl to a race at practice when we were playing with the Gators. And everybody laughed at me because I said, Daryl's going to blow his fucking doors off. And everybody's like, come on, Ryan. He's old and he's fat and blah, blah, blah. I'm not kidding. It wasn't even close.
Yeah. And Daryl must have been, 40 something?
Yeah, he was damn near 40, I think. So
Yeah. No, that's crazy. And yeah, Jordan Heather, phenomenal quarterback as well. Yep. Played a couple years for the Gators. Yeah. Worst teammate. And now, hey, you have to answer this, and you can't escape it. So I'm making everyone answer it. Worst teammate.
Okay. All right. And you know what? This is going to be a little bit of a story time. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Edmonton,
you know what the beautiful thing about podcasts is if people don't want to listen, they can just turn it off. So yeah, tell your story.
Yeah. Edmonton Iceman, and some of you guys are going to recognize this guy's name, and he's gonna get a little bit upset at me probably, but because he's my friend, but he was a terrible teammate, and he actually turned out to be a hero. His name's Roger Jamot, and at the time he was playing running back for the Edmonton Icemen. He would show up to every second practice, didn't really try hard until the games came along, but he was a stud athlete, right? And then he missed the championship game because he got arrested and tried to run away from the cops. And they chased him. And we were actually at practice listening on a police scanner. And that's when we realized, holy shit, that's Roger.
What?
because they said it was a red Honda Civic with a blue helmet and an ice cube on the
Wait,
back
why were
windshield.
you listening to a police scanner at practice though?
So Grant Jongajan, who was one of the guys that founded the Iceman,
Yeah.
he was an Edmonton city cop.
Oh, okay.
And we were all sitting around, and this is okay. So this is another part of the funny story. We didn't have the key to get into our little shed because we had a shed at St. Francis Xavier School.
Yeah.
So we couldn't get in. So we were trying to jimmy the lock. And of course, me being who I am, I said, this looks really good. I said, a cop, 4 black guys, and an Indian trying to break into a school. I was like, somebody's going to get arrested here.
Yeah.
And so the cop starts laughing because, I'm the Indian and there were other 4 were black dudes. So then we're standing outside because Roger had the key to the locker room. So we're like, whatever. So we're just standing around by Grant's car and we're listening to this car chase that's happening like 10 blocks away. And they literally talk to Roger Jamont. Here's the thing about Roger Jamont. Stud athlete, really, really good football player, not a good teammate, right? But I will say this, stellar human being. So a couple years ago, I think a year and a half ago now, there was a fire and his kids were in the house and he didn't just run into the house. He busted down a door, ran through the burning house, pushed his kids out the window, and the window was too small for him to get out. So then he had to run back through the burning house to get out again.
And he's fine. He's okay.
No, he's got like, he's recovering now. He's got, he had burns over something like 60% of his body.
Jesus, man.
But if you Google his name, Roger Jamont, that's him.
Yeah. And you played with him for how many years?
4 years. And then he played the year that I won most valuable lineman. He was playing defensive end. I was playing defensive tackle, and he never kept contained. Worst defensive end ever.
It still bothers you.
It still bugs me. When you're a D tackle, you need those guys to keep contained.
No, that's fair. All right. I have some more. We'll have you on another episode, but last one that I'd like to do today. What do you think the AFL needs the most to grow and reach its full potential?
It needs to change the governing system. And I talked about that with you at length. And I'll give the guys here a little bit of a rundown.
Yes, please do.
The executive has no power the way that it's set up. Bottom line is that the team reps can basically do whatever they want, and the executive can't combat it. They can't make something happen without the buy-in of a majority of the team reps. But team reps it's a problem because a team rep's job is to do what's best for his team. But a league executive's job is to do what's best for the league.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't have team reps as league reps, and the league reps have to have some sort of power. Mm-hmm. And until that changes, you're never going to see a Jim Lightfoot who literally goes against his own team when it's necessary. You'll never see that again. And I think that until you have a league exec with actual power and the ability to tell the team reps, no, this is what's best for the league and you're going to do it, you'll end up with like a toothless league executive, and you'll end up with like a website that's never updated. You'll end up with, really piss poor promotional stuff. I mean, the best promoter of this league right now is a guy that's not even really affiliated with the league, Dave Dominic. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Like, he does more to promote this league than the league does.
Yeah.
And like you were doing stuff, all these guys that are doing stuff on their own, I mean, I would argue that the unofficial AFL Facebook group was probably by far the most trafficked out of all of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, I only made that because I like messing with people. It's entertaining. Right. But the sad part is that nobody over there seems willing to step up. Because look, you know this because you were the president for a little while. It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can't pay someone to do a full-time job, then you need somebody who really wants to do that job because they're going to do it out of their own time, their own wallet. And it's a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of heartache because a lot of times you'll have a great idea, but you don't have the ability to push that idea forward because a bunch of other guys will just shit on it because it's not their idea.
Well, and that was the disappointing part for me when I was president was I would spend a lot of time, and as you've mentioned a few times, you and I had hour-long conversations on multiple occasions. Me asking you, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of that idea? How do I do this? How do I do that? And then putting it all together after spending hours on the phone with you and doing other research and then sending it to the league and then just immediately getting shut down. Like no one would even, pay attention to it. And that was, and these are people that I respect and all that stuff, but it's just, I think, they work full-time jobs and have families. Maybe they didn't have time to read it. But for me, that was so frustrating because I was trying to do these things to advance the league and come up with ideas. And it really fell on deaf ears. And I'm hoping to change that with this podcast.
100%. Teach the biggest thing is always accountability and transparency, right? Those are not just buzzwords. They should be the words that everybody operates by. The biggest problem that the AFL has is that there really is no accountability because most of the players don't even know the way that their representatives vote at these meetings. We had a meeting one year where the guy from the Seahawks fell asleep in the middle of the meeting. And then he didn't wake up until it was time to talk about all-star stuff. And then he literally said, I'll just go along with whatever Jim Lightfoot said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, if you have guys like that, yeah, it's cool that you showed up for the meeting, dude, but maybe send somebody that's not going to sleep through it.
Yeah.
Take it seriously.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. I hope this is the start of something. And we'll have, like I said, we'll have President Vince and Vice President Teague on the next episode, and we'll discuss some. I know they're both good guys and they want what's best for the league. And I hope this is kind of a starting point where we can, and I want, like, and Omari's, when Omari and I talk about what we want from this podcast, like we want people to listen, players to listen, fans to listen, because we want their input. We want to hear, I want to get messages from guys that say, hey, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? Or I want people to put their heads together and be like, hey, we have something unique and special here in the Alberta Football League. How can we appreciate this thing that is so unique and special? How can we give back? How can we make it better as a whole, as a community? And so I hope we can do that.
Well, yeah, see, the one thing they got to avoid is the trap of the idea that everything always bigger is always better. Mm-hmm. I think what you need to do is you need to consolidate. You need to make sure that all the franchises are healthy before you try to grow again. I think that you got to make sure that guys are aware that it's a lot of work to run a team. Like it is. If you want to run a team well, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway,
all right. Omar, you got anything to finish?
Just to add to when it comes to the meetings, I think one year I remember teaching you were president. I asked if I could just Zoom in. So this is, I guess, around the time where COVID too. So it was going to be a Zoom meeting, and there was no, I guess there were no rules for anyone on the public can come in and watch. And just from my perspective of just being on the public side, just saying, hey, I want to see how things operate. It was definitely very, let's just say things were just running in circles for a good chunk of time. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, me and the public, I wasn't able to say anything. I just wanted to watch, observe, because this is a meeting for the public, me being a public coming in. And I was just like, man, like there's definitely got to be a shift of like how the process and the procedures got to change. Because literally I felt like I got off that meeting and I was like, I felt like nothing, like very little got done in the time that was taken. So the way it used to work, like when Jim was there, when I was the Wolfpack rep, Jim was the AFL rep, I would literally be telling people, no, we're going to follow the agenda. And there was a written agenda and we would follow it. And my job really as like kind of like the I guess the older rep there was to just tell guys, okay, we can have discussions about side stuff after. First, we'll take care of the stuff that's on the agenda. Mm-hmm. And I think that the last couple of years, especially, what I've seen is that important stuff is getting left behind. If I'm a player, and this should be the goal of every team rep and every league rep should be the same, to get as many players on the field as possible. So if I'm a guy that says, hey, you know what, I want to play football, and I just moved to Edmonton from wherever. So I type in men's football Edmonton. Why is it that the AFL website isn't the first thing that pops up? That's pretty simple. You can do search engine optimization, right? Why is it that when I go to the AFL website, I can't get up to the date stats? And then when I look at it, the stats aren't even, some of those stats were ridiculous. And look, I know that some of these guys are like, whatever, it's just beer league. It's like, well, if you ever want to be more than that, then you have to act like it. And that means making sure your website is up to date.
That means the league website needs to be up to date. That means league websites should be standardized. Why is it some of them don't even have heights and weights and roster numbers? Like, this is simple stuff.
Yeah, it's you're doing it again. You're telling the truth, and it will offend some people, I'm sure. But it is true, and I think, again, like I've said, the whole point of this podcast is we want to make this league great. So these are things that we need to fix, and I appreciate you bringing those to the table, because we having that's in today's world, number one is let's have not just a functioning website, but a really good fucking website, a really good fucking website.
Yeah, something that people will be like, dude, did you see the cool shit on the website?
Yes, let's get highlights on there. Let's get streaming options on there. There's so many things we can do, and we'll talk about that with them. So, cool. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on, man. I wanted you to be guest number one for so many reasons. I appreciate you and what you've done for me and what you've done for the league. And don't change, because people love to hate you, but people truly do love you. They just don't want to admit it yet. So we're going to have you on again. And Omari, anything to close?
Hey, this is just going to go out on all the platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts. I know I think Apple Music can give us a 5-star rating, helps us be boosted up in the algorithm there.
Sweet.
Yeah, just share it out to all your friends and those who are potential teammates and guys you want to have here and listen, because it's as this episode especially, it's history about the league and good stuff to hear. We are working on a Discord server. That way, then we can have guys communicate more there, and maybe even do like a little transfer portal. Maybe we'll see how that goes, but. Share, comment, all that good stuff, and we'll take it away from there.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Ryan. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. You guys, hey, good luck with what you're doing. I think it's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Good night,
Bye.
fellas.